Can you tell how many people are on?
Yeah.
Okay, because we sign in to the number of people who are here, but we don't. All right, at the end of the day, give me a number.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell you. And usually I can tell you who as well.
How much is it normally?
Depends on the weather and stuff, but anywhere from 10 to 30.
Oh, okay.
Hi, folks. Can you guys hear me? How's the audio level? I'm using a different microphone setup this time. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Anybody out there? Can you hear me? Okay, good to know, Dave. We'll get started in a little bit. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Is that better? Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Back down the gain a little bit. Is it okay? Okay, this is what we're going to go with then. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I don't have a mixer, Dave. We're just going to have to live with it. As long as you guys can hear it, it's just audio, it's just human voice anyway. Alright, I've turned it back down. How's it sound now, Joe Devonshire? Testing. Testing. Testing one more time. It's 7:30. I can say a little more, Joe. How does this sound? Is it too loud or not? You guys are on a delay on the text, so I can't tell when I make changes which ones you guys are referring to. Okay, if it sounds good, then that's what we're going with, because I don't want to make it any worse. Well, I'm sure we'll be getting started soon. So anyway, thank you for the audio checks.
Not anything good.
Nothing's ever good.
Did you get any farther on that docking already, or you gave up for now?
I gave up on it. I got too many other things to do.
You don't want to run that?
Spending an awful lot of time on everything else. Like the website and the video tapes and stuff.
Yeah. Website's looking good.
Thank you. I mean, I'm running out of pages that are blank still.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can tweak it forever. But
Oh, yeah. It's looking nice.
thank you.
And the library will be growing.
Well, hopefully.
Oh, no, that's in progress.
Oh, you're talking about, yeah, I know about those.
Yep. That'll be a nice improvement.
It's already on, so watch your mouth.
Great work, Matt.
Thank you.
Everything you do.
Oh, yeah.
We started just before I went to Hawaii. Yeah.
Well, you're the guy that used to be here, and I talked to you about this, and we were learning about Ford. And he said Ford used to go to the junkyards and things were reviewed. It seemed like we're still in good shape. I said, come down.
Guess college students aren't patriotic anymore. I say, guess college students aren't patriotic anymore. I don't see the American flag in the wall.
Son's car got stolen.
Excuse me, sir, are you lost?
Where?
It's actually not my son.
Maybe because they're all foreign students.
He's not going to the bathroom.
Post office, that's all in different areas.
So apparently the insurance company lost at next Monday. And I gotta go out and get another car.
I understand why you back there and warm.
I'm losing so much hair, it's just
Oh, yeah.
Have it stolen.
Hey, listen, if it wasn't for my mother's, I'd be looking like Tyson.
How do you?
Yeah, take your hat off, will you?
It's costing me
Kind of.
It's $30 a day.
Like I said, I like that line, that's how.
Okay, please find a seat. All right, I want to welcome everyone to the February 13th, 2026 meeting of the New Jersey Antique Radio Club here at beautiful Bowen Hall, Princeton University. Do we have any new faces in the crowd?
So one.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Richard Hewitt.
Richard Hewitt. I
Yes,
seem to
sir.
know that name, but I don't know that face. So, Richard, tell us about yourself.
Well,
Please
I'm an
stand.
electronics engineer.
Please stand.
All right. I'm an electronics engineer, and I work on solar a lot, energy power conversion for solar, and display technology like organic light emitting diode displays. Yeah, OLEDs and flexible OLEDs, stuff like that. And just recently been between jobs, so I volunteered at the museum the radio
We
technology.
love you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, I'm glad. Now I'm glad I was between jobs. So sadly, I have another job starting Monday. So
So we're never going to see you again?
no, I'll be there. I'll be there Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe back and forth. You know.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, we definitely appreciate that. What do you collect? Do you collect anything?
So I collect old radio stuff, old radios, equipment, oscilloscopes. That's my fetish, is oscilloscopes. So
Oh.
I have a 1945 Dumont oscilloscope that works.
204,
Well,
208.
I think in storage we still have a few oscilloscopes around that
Yeah,
I
so
think you might find interesting.
Does it work as good as
If
it
you were
weighs?
here about a year ago, we could fill that wall with them for you.
Welcome.
All right, well, so welcome.
Thank you.
And again, really appreciate your being a docent.
He doesn't mention that he builds things too, as in a homemade ring oscillator that actually works, and he can demonstrate, nodes and antinodes on standing waves and things like
Well,
that.
I've been a lumped model guy for my whole life, so I'm trying to move into the distributed element world.
How did you find us?
I came to the museum about probably a decade ago with my kids. I brought my kids in. I don't know how I found it then, but I always remembered it, and I always thought, if I'm ever between jobs, I'm here.
Because there's times when Harry has to go out on the streets in Red Bank with a sign on.
Sandwich board, right?
Whatever
Yeah.
it takes. Whatever it takes.
That's right.
All right, sorry. Thank you. Thanks so much. All right, anybody else? Any other new faces in the crowd? No, but, well, that's good, okay. Bill, I'm glad you found your way down here, too.
I came early,
Yeah, good.
and so for 2 hours I had time to kill. So I walked into town and got a little bite to eat. So that's
Good, nice town, right?
Yeah.
Nice town. All right, moving on to the infirmary reports. Unfortunately, it's a long one. But it's a good point. Our DX member, Joe Devonshire, hi Joe, is back using all of his limbs, no more mechanical arm. And we saw him on a Zoom meeting last night, so he's doing very well. I'm really happy to see that too. As a matter of fact, with his good arm, and his bad arm, he's restoring a very pretty 3-dialer. So I was really impressed with that. VP Emeritus Sal Rosindi is back at Care 1. He is status-wise pretty much the same on and off. I hope to be visiting him this Wednesday at Care 1. That's in Homedale. And I'll give you a report next time after seeing him. We have to be very thankful to John Ruccolo. He is he's the point man with Lisa, Sal's wife, on what's happening there. So I do appreciate that, John. So, all right. Unfortunately, in January, we lost longtime member Walt Jacobson. I'm sorry. He passed away of a heart attack. He was 59 years old. Ooh. A number of our club members paid their respects at his wake in Red Bank. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. And another Walt is here. In fact, Walt Heskes.
Hey, how are you?
Walter, come on up and say a few words about Walt.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Some of you remember me in the past. Sometimes I haven't.
It's been a while.
Where am I standing?
Right here next to me.
Okay. Yeah, so
We're live. We're live on YouTube.
oh, goodness. Hello to the world. Well, it was a very sad thing. Mario called me about this passing of Walter, and it was particularly painful because Walter and I had developed a very interesting relationship. He would get radios from time to time, and in the last couple of years, you know, he would get something that didn't work right, and he would look to me to help him get it working. A couple of them were really interesting. One was an Emerson that had a very nice cabinet, you know, but didn't work at all. It was basically just a redo on that one. And a couple others. Most recently, it was a Heathkit transistor set that had very low volume. It turned out it had been, of course, you know, over the years recapped and played with, and all the transistors in it were replaced at one point. And basically, though, the problem was not so much the bad transistors. There were some leakage and so on, but in that one in particular, and he thought it was the batteries. It wasn't the batteries. It turned out with very low audio, somebody had replaced the last interstage transformer. For some reason, whatever it was, it didn't match properly. The impedance was wrong. And so basically, as soon as you replace that with something that was a little bit more appropriate to the circuit, you got good audio. So, you know, it's a kind of problem. Sometimes, you know, you're recapping a radio and maybe it doesn't occur to you to look into other components than just the caps. Now, that brings me to the reason I wanted to share something with you. One of the radios you had was this Belmont. I think it's the push button one. You probably have all seen this at 6331, something like that. Mm-hmm. It had been restored lovingly by, I don't know who, some technician. It was clean. You could eat off of it. And it had a nice new back on it, and it was just gorgeous. But it didn't work worth a crap. It was just the worst RF, no gain at all across the band. You could turn up the audio volume. You could hear a little bit of noise. You could hear stations. It was sort of working. So when he gave it to me, he said, "Look, can you do anything with this?" I said, "Let me see what I can do." So it turned out it had been recapped, okay, and properly. You know, I checked all the caps to see if they were the right sizes. And, you know, there's nothing critical in radio. You know, a .01, a .02, .05, they'll all work if they're basically in the right locations. So the thing was, that wasn't the problem. I said, well, has he got all the tubes in the right places? You know, obviously that's something you would check. And thus they were good, and the tubes were all good. The, you know, SA7, SQ7, 50L6, that kind of thing. Typical A85. So then I said, well, wait a minute, you know, how about the IFs? Did maybe they trim them a little bit differently? Maybe they were, so we checked, no, perfect, 455 all the way through. You know, all the IFs were tuned nicely. So now you're starting to run out of, like, options. What's going on with this thing? Why am I not seeing on a gain? So then the next thing was to look at something that a lot of us overlook when we redo a radio, the resistors. And it turns out this radio had, you know, a number of high meg resistors, as you know, in the AVC circuit. And one of the resistors, as I went through and checked, was a 10 meg, 10 meg resistor in some part of the AVC circuit. It was open, completely open. It had been overlooked. You know, it looked nice. It was clean. But this was an open resistor when it should have had 10 megs. It had 0. As soon as I replaced that, bang, the whole thing came back to life, and the radio was perfect. So when I went and talked to him, I said, you know, this is very interesting because a lot of times, you know, you restore radio and you think, you know, you've got it all figured out, and you turn it on, it's not so great. Let me put this one on eBay, or let me sell it because it wasn't really worth. But all it nearly needs sometimes is for you to look at those pesky little resistors. That's why I mentioned that to you. So that was the problem with this thing. Anyway, it was a lot of fun working on his radios, and I will miss the guy, and I'm sure a lot of us will. And also at Kutztown, too. You know, it was nice to have him there. So anyway, thank you for letting me indulge a little bit, and I appreciate that.
Obviously, Walt is quite a technician, and he's come back to us. He just
damn me
rejoined
with
the
faint
club.
praise.
It's good to see him again. Okay, on to old business. Well, what's the old business? It's our usual plea for club membership renewals, all right? And we're getting close to our cutoff date, which will be the end of February. And gee, February's a short month, so only 28 days in February, right? So please get your monies in if you haven't paid yet. You can pay Ray this evening. You can pay via PayPal, thanks to our new and improved website. It's very easy, big button to push. And we also can have a check sent to Marcia Simpkin, and that's 33 Lakeland Drive, Barnegat, and New Jersey 08005. Look at that. I actually memorized that. So, please, it's important. And for you folks out there, if you're not going, actually I'm talking to the camera, if you are not intent on renewing, do us a favor, all right? Just say, I'm resigning, and that's fine. It's not a problem. We understand. But instead of having to keep chasing people, it gets kind of boring after a while. Okay. Harry, docents. We have a new docent. How are docents doing in general?
Well, new docents are doing well. We have 3 very active new docents, including Don Pingatore, who's here.
Thank you, Don.
And Richard, and also Bill Yeager. The issue is we could use more, because you realize some of us are, what do they say, long in the tooth?
Let me see your teeth.
If you know of anyone, or if you would be interested in being, in participating in the museum, and really, showing things to people and talking to them about communications technologies, radios and TVs and things like that, telephones in particular, all those things. They need you and we need you. And we have a process by which you can sign up and get training and get right into the swing of things.
Harry, what's the training like? What do you need to know?
You need to know what we have in the museum and how it is historically related to
There is a manual.
There is a manual. In fact, there are a couple of documents like that. It just requires enthusiasm and the ability to speak to visitors. Now, there's a second kind of volunteer we need. We have a fellow who has never spoken to a visitor at all, but he's building some amazing things for some of our future displays, and designing and building. Now, that means he doesn't have to be there as often, but he delivers things. So other tasks are also important for volunteering, but we do especially need docents.
All right. How are other clubs making out with their museums and docents?
Most of them are fairly short on docents. I understand that it's a universal problem around the country, probably around the world.
Well, like you say, and I always say, anybody within 25 miles of the RTM should be able to spend some time as a docent. Right?
We expect Richard to still be coming in on weekends,
Well, he didn't say he wasn't.
He will.
Even during the week, I mean, we could write a letter to your boss. Or something.
Yeah. I get 1 day a week work from home.
Being recorded.
Home could be, that's a loose word, right?
Okay. All right, thanks, Harry. Okay, new business. Next Saturday, February 21st, we will have our winter repair clinic. I have a number of clients already calling. They called up last month. But I need experts. How many experts will I have? Pray tell. Can I see hands up? Hands up. Oh, wait a minute.
Come on, new member, come on, raise your hand.
I'm not very excited.
Is that why I got the little, yeah?
How about if I bring you blonde?
Okay.
You better show up.
Are you going to double the pay for showing up?
We'll talk about that later.
You get 3 slices.
I don't want anybody else to know, right? All right, but seriously, I need help, all right? And I know there's some clients who like to make private bidding on certain experts. And they said, well, can I work with so-and-so? I had called him on the phone and he knows what I'm going to be bringing, but I really don't appreciate that because you're not the only one, And I think we all know who I'm talking about. So anyway, that will be next Saturday. There will be complimentary bagels and there will be complimentary pizza. And who knows what might show up in the suite category.
I assume this is weather permitting?
Why?
By
I don't know.
next weekend, it's gonna be wonderful.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Harry said so.
I promised that we are going to be working on radios and audio equipment inside 9032A, not outside.
Well, we had the snow shovel by the gate.
That's the museum, right?
With heat?
With
There is he.
heat too.
Soldering iron.
Turn on a more radio.
As a boss used to tell me when I was a young apprentice, shivering, he says, "Hey kid, the heat's in your tools. Work fast." And I'm not kidding either. Okay, and before you know it, it'll be our spring will be here, and will be also our spring show, Hamfest show, swap meet at PAL, and that will be March 15th. March 15th. Rich, March 15th. That's a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, and that's what it is. March 15th. So, everybody has to understand that. If you're going to be a vendor, it is March 15th. If you're going to be a buyer, it's March 15th. Don't ask me why. I will say it once and only this time. PAL considers us outsiders. Wait a minute, this is the New Jersey Antique Radio Club. We're outsiders. We have nothing to do with PAL. And I had to eat this forever whenever I deal with the hierarchy there. So according to them, we are lucky that we have any dates at all. All right? I'm sorry to put it that way, but it's just the truth. So let's see how it works. I hope it works well. I understand certain people, hey, that's great. And they brought to my attention the traffic. There'll be no traffic on a Sunday morning. Somebody else mentioned to me, well, I got more time to fill my van full of stuff to bring to the swap. So I hope it works out well. I really do. Because I think Sundays will be more available to us than Saturdays. I just got that feeling. Let's just see. So, you want to be a vendor? You've got to respond to my email, okay? You have to register with me your email, send me an email, your email back, okay? So that I can say, yes, you need a table, 2 tables, we take payment there, not over the phone, not PayPal, not me sending me a check. By now you should know how we do it, okay? And the flyers are outside on the table. Any questions on that? Great. Okay. All right. Like I said, I've already taken some table reservations too. People are calling up. So that's a good sign. Our annual broadcast band DX contest ended last week. Now, how many participated? How many in the room participated? Yeah, see, that's the problem.
May I say something about the contest?
Yes.
The contest was started on the 16th, am I correct? And it ran supposedly for like 2 weeks.
Yes.
They added another week
Yes.
because they said the radio reception was bad for the solar thing.
Yeah.
I busted my ass for 1 week, getting up day and night. For what? If you're going to add another week, you're changing the rules of the contest. It's not fair.
That's interesting, Mario.
I mean, if anything, why don't we just move it up a week? This way we have that last week and the overlap week. And if there's a problem, we're good the following week.
Well, I think what it really boiled down to, Mario, was the conditions weren't great. But
No, it wasn't, but I
what was
found
also the
stations-
problem? What was the problem is that we weren't getting any participation.
Well,
So that's why Al said, let's add another week. That's why.
yeah, but it kills the people that work hard at what they're doing, and it takes it away from me. Because by adding another week, it's not fair. It's changing the rules. It's a contest. We all got the same problem. We all live with it.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but we did it also last year too.
Right, so we should not do it and just do the last week and overlap week, and we'd be good.
But how about the next time we do 2 weeks, period?
How
That's
about a
fine.
month? Why don't you just make it a month? What the hell is it? Give people a chance. Let's make it year round.
That's a good idea. You told me to exit year round. Absolutely. All right, so anyway, get your logs in. I set my log in, as pathetic as it was. But it was, look, it's something we do and we enjoy. So I talked to Al about it, and he was a little disappointed. Okay. Okay, listen, please be sure to read this month's Jersey Broadcaster. Our newsletter editor, Dave Sika, he received permission from James O'Neill to reprint his extensive article on Jack DeWitt. Any relation? No. And his amazing career locally, having to do with engineering on the Project Diana and the Moon Mouse, which obviously you know where that is. Marconi Road. So, read the article. Don't forget about it. Right? It's a very good, extensive article about a very fascinating man who didn't start out as an engineer, but ended up being. Okay, guys. All right. Any other new business? Any other new business? All right, Ham Shack Corner. Not too much Ham Shack Corner, is there, Jack?
No, not much at all, really.
Unless
Well,
you
at
happen
the,
to
at
be
the show they'll be, you know.
at the Hamcation,
Yeah.
down in Central Florida Fairgrounds,
Right.
Expo Park. It's happening right now this weekend, 13, 14, 15. So I understand that club member Leo Asser is down there right now, and he was going to give me a report when he got back. And he travels in an RV, so I guess he's down there in his RV. So he does that every year. Good for him. Has anyone else been there? Anyone else been down
Years
there?
ago.
You were there?
Yeah. I went to Dayton every year too.
Oh. Okay. So let's call it then. All right. All right, so after a short intermission and sale of our 50/50 tickets, we will have a wonderful presentation from our very own Professor Mike Littman, who, by the way, let me just say something about Professor Mike. A lot of you folks just sort of take it for granted that, well, this is where we go. We come here sometimes, and sometimes we go to InfoAge, and then we come back here. Well, Professor Mike, how many years ago was he? 15?
Once we stopped going to RCA.
Yeah.
Take care.
Long time ago. Professor Mike enabled us, all right, as a club member to come here to Princeton and Bowen Hall in particular. And we have to be really grateful and thankful that you've been able to do that for us too.
Well, let me say it's zero work. The club donates to, every year donates to the School of Engineering, which is good. And I'm a faculty member in our materials center, and I've gotten nothing out of it for 30 years. So the fact that I'm able to do this is actually, it's sort of payback for my being listed on their website. So it's zero
outreach on your part.
It is zero work, though. That's the person to thank is actually Andrea Meniscus. She's the secretary to the dean. So in most organizations, you know, the most important person is not the person in charge, but the assistant to the person in charge. So Andrea is the assistant. She makes everything happen. And also Kevin Lamb, who's
I remember
also
that name.
Yeah. So Kevin is the one. So every time I get a list of dates from Harry, I flip it over to Kevin, and then Kevin takes care of everything. So, as I said, zero work.
Sounds like a government job.
Well, you also give us our February.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And the presentation this evening is entitled "How Innovation Happens: Telegraphy, Technical and Commercial Origins Here in Princeton." All right, and then after that, we'll have an auction of donations outside, and I'll say something about that in a while. All right, so 50-50. Who is going to volunteer? Who is going to volunteer to sell 50/50? Ah, Vice President Paul. Who's going to help Paul? Ah, Bob Bennett. Thank you very much. Okay, short intermission, guys. Short intermission.
Oh, yeah. No, we have
All right, folks, 3 for 2. 3 for 2. 50/50.
Oh, yes.
Work 'em up.
What'd you buy 3, sir?
Oh, he always likes working for it.
How much weight do you plan on spending? Oh my God. So I can't do, now you're just gonna make me do math. How many is that?
It's 3 for 2. 6 times 10 is 60. 30.
3 for 2. So it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah. Right, you see
Hey, Facebook friend.
Hello.
How you doing?
Irritated at the moment.
Because of this.
His odds were pretty good.
The remote mics just stopped working. It says it's using the onboard mic, even though the app specifically showed them the same.
Right, the back is on YouTube.
Oh, they're lit. I can hear it. I mean,
Not that it matters.
I'll go for the easiest.
that's up to the receiver. It's the audio not going out. It's either not going out of the receiver, or it's not being picked up in here. As soon as I pull it out of the camera, it shows that I unhooked it. It's stupid.
I use the internal mic anyway.
Yeah.
As long as I get the winning.
That sounds pretty simple.
It is pretty stupid.
Sorry.
I feel like Lucy, you know, where she's doing the chocolate factory and everything, you know, the chocolates are coming out fast.
That is famous.
Everybody knows that.
Let me see if I have some.
It just goes off into the lake, but it's outside the house.
There's two more.
And going into your receiver.
Okay.
We're not talking about tubes or transistors. We're
I
talking
saw
about pure
a
crystal.
This is it, right?
No gerrymandering.
had a perfect door on it, wasn't it?
All right.
Yeah, no gerrymandering.
So next time, I don't know, when is this thing? February?
January.
So let's hope we live long enough and we'll do that.
What year?
Oh, look at that. Is that what you were using?
Yeah, that's what I was using.
Oh, that's not a make-believe, that's a real So you have, what is this, coils down there, and then you got your big transformer, your big...
You got like 4 you can switch over
yeah,
to.
different
Yeah,
takeoffs.
Takeoff. Then you can use either what's the crystal.
connect- yeah,
And then you see if
cat's
you
whisker.
click, you can use a cat's whisker, or you can go over and it's got the diode.
Yeah,
switches
one
the
N34
diode.
or something like that. Now, there are different diodes you can try.
You can try them, yeah, like
You know what's fun that? Remember that guy Tom Blunder's Tom?
the woman boys, yeah.
He knew about these diodes. Schottky diodes is what he was using. What is that? The amplifier? Yeah, it's just ordinary. What are you doing is listening.
Yeah. It's a little rock and roll amplifier that takes 2 9-volt batteries. And it works.
My grandmother actually gave it to me. I couldn't find it, so I thought you were out here. Right, so here's the scoop. My grandfather bought it for her. She's always playing. Every time we visit, she'll be playing together.
Well, my friend, both he and his wife split down at church. His wife is a retired concert singer. They have a Yamaha upright. Kind of a studio piano. It's not giant upright. And when I went into work on Monday, every day she had marked off about 6 keys, 6 or 8 keys with little pictures. Each key had some weird problems, unlike the other keys.
From the routine or just out of tune?
A couple of one of them was sometimes the hammer goes too close to the string and it goes boom, like that, and it bounces on the string.
Right. There's a name for that. It's called bounce.
I think so. Yeah, instead of going boom, it goes boom. And I have learned how to do it. And then each key has a stop. You put the key down. The key goes down. And
there's another adjustment for that too.
Yeah, it's shins. Shins on the post. In the middle where it rocks, it's got shins under there. They control the resting position. And then the shins here control the
That's going to be real hard to figure out. That's got to be a real art to figure out how to adjust all those shins.
88 times 2. Real piano technicians have a whole like plastic box with 20 different thicknesses of shims in there. Just if it's slowing down too far, let's put a little shim in there. Oh, that's too much, let's put a thinner shim in. Yeah.
The other thing that boggles my mind about many of the keys are more than one string. And that they're not always, my understanding, and that's supposed to be tuned to exactly the same pitch. It's supposed to be a little, that's not true?
You got to do your best to attempt to all 3 strings at the same pitch. But then there's stretch turn, which is the weirdest thing at all. Like the middle A is 440 hertz. And then the next day is 180 hertz. But when you get farther off, they should be, the upper note should be just a tiny bit sharp. And then the lower note should be just a tiny bit flat.
Right.
That's the best tuning to the ear.
Make it sound like the whole sound. Yeah, it sounds
better that way.
Interesting. How much do you know how much to do that?
I have not been able to locate scientific way to do it.
Find a seat, folks. Find a seat, guys. Find a seat. Find a seat. We have nice pots this evening. We are $30. $30. So, I will ask these new and improved docents to read the paper.
Okay. The number is 413 07 64.
Missed it by 1.
4. Come on up. Come on down. Okay. That's
actually your pay for fixing that machine.
All right.
That is.
It's correct? Correct.
There you are, sir. $30.
That's right. That's the same place.
My first car was free. Yeah, I did. I beat it to the ground.
Okay. No mic?
They can hear you. It's just coming from here.
Professor Mike, you are on.
They can hear you just fine.
Okay, so this may be a little bit disjointed, this talk. So I'll tell you what I've been doing lately. This is it relates to the telegraph and telegraph history in Princeton. I teach a course on the history of engineering. It's called Engineering in the Modern World, and I do a lecture on the history of the telegraph. And that's the story of Joseph Henry and Samuel Morse. Now, how many of you have heard of Joseph Henry? Okay, some of you, some have not. So the unit of induction, right, is the Henry. That's named for Joseph Henry. He was a professor at Princeton. And I've been studying Joseph Henry's instruments, some of which are here at Princeton, and some are at the Smithsonian. Now, why are they at the Smithsonian? Well, when he left Princeton in 1846, he became the first secretary of the Smithsonian. And for 30 years, until he passed away, he led the Smithsonian. So he started the Smithsonian. So I talked to the curators at the Smithsonian. They have many of his instruments. We have some of them here. As a matter of fact, I have a device here that Joseph Henry made. I've got this on. I borrowed this from our physics department, and it's part of an exhibit that I'm in the process of putting together with students on local history, Princeton local history, and it's Joseph Henry's connection to the early development of the telegraph. And what you're going to hear a little bit about is Joseph Henry also knew Samuel Morse. And at first, he was a great supporter of Morse and helped Morse get started in telegraphy. And then Morse got sued. There's a famous lawsuit, Supreme Court, O'Reilly v. Morse, challenging his patent. And Joseph Henry was brought on as an expert witness. And then after that, Morse started to publicly attack Henry, and they became bitter enemies for the rest of their lives. Henry was offended by Morse's accusation that Henry didn't do anything of significance, and Morse was sort of an individual that tried to claim a lot of credit for himself. So in any case, to get to the beginning of this story, I have some students that have been working with me, and we've been replicating some of Joseph Henry's devices, including his early telegraph. We've been replicating some of the things that Morse did. And there's a program at Princeton called the Process Program. It's the Princeton Project for Community Engaged Scholarship. So the idea is to have Princeton students work with a community partner. It might be a school, it might be a library. Our partner is the Historical Society in Princeton. And we've been working with them for about a year, and an opportunity surfaced for us to put together an exhibit at the museum that's on Quaker Road at the Historical Society about Joseph Henry and the telegraph. And I started researching that. I knew a lot about Joseph Henry, and I knew a little bit about Morse. And I certainly read about what Morse did with the early telegraph demonstration. That was a demonstration of sending a message from Ellicott City near Baltimore to Washington. That was in 1844. And then, since it's the Princeton Historical Society, there was interest in featuring telegraphy and its connection to Princeton. So I've been learning a lot more about it, and I'm going to start, the early part of this that I'm going to go through, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I found out about Princeton, which is really, I find really fascinating. And I had no idea that Princeton played such an important role, both in terms of I knew about Joseph Henry's early work, but I didn't realize that one of the first telegraph stations that when Morse went commercial was actually in Princeton. Matter of fact, it was at the Princeton Basin. I didn't even know what the Princeton Basin was until I started researching this. Some of you are from the local area. You may know Alexander Road. So that's Alexander Road.
Yes.
Is okay. So that's the road takes you out to Route 1. As you go down Alexander Road, you cross over a bridge, and you're crossing over. I think it's Stony Brook, or it might be the Millstone River. I'll take you and check in some of the maps I have here. And there are places that you can rent a canoe. If some of you have seen that canoe rental. So it turns out that was the red light district in Princeton. And matter of fact, this image, which came out of this book, so let me get to this. This is a book of railroad illustrations by this fellow, Grit Teller. He painted these illustrations that showed up in a lot of calendars in the early, late 20s, early 30s. And this image here is the locomotive there is the John Bull. So if you go to the Smithsonian today, the John Bull, the original John Bull, is there. It was the first locomotive. It was locomotive number 1 on the Camden and Amboy rail line. Okay, and it was used on this branch line. This image here is of the Princeton Basin. I found this from out through the Historical Society in West Windsor. West Windsor is interested in the history of Princeton Junction. That's the train station. This predates the Princeton Junction train station. So what you see there is the John Bull locomotive, and you see there's a canal boat, right? This is the turning basin. The canal boat was on the DNR Canal, Delaware and Raritan Canal. Turns out that the Camden and Amboy Railroad and the DNR Canal were chartered the same year. It was 1831. And transportation system coming in. And then in the background there on the left there is the hotel. So there was a railroad depot there, and people you'd stop in Princeton, you could stay overnight at the hotel. And then to the right is that small building to the right is the store. And then next to the store, it was a duplex, was the telegraph office. Okay, so this was the first telegraph office in the Princeton area. So this was the telegraph office here. The date of this painting is 1862. So I'm going to go through the history a little bit of what happened locally. But to sort of, the process of looking into the telegraph, I realized that it's very heavily connected with what was going on in America in terms of canals. So remember, these are transportation systems. And the telegraph is an information system. So the canal and the railroads came in together in our area. And then the telegraph office was started in 1847. So the DNR Canal and the rail lines was 1831. And then about 15, 16 years later, Morse opened up one of 9 telegraph offices, and there was one in Princeton. It was not very successful. Very little traffic. By the way, as I said, this is part of like the red light district in Princeton. There were murders. If you look in the old newspapers, it was really a seedy hotel. It was lots of bad things were happening. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is if you lived in Princeton when Joseph Henry was here, so that he came in 1832, and you wanted to go to New York or to Philadelphia, you would walk down to the basin and catch the train. Okay, you didn't have to go to the Princeton Junction. So you'll see, I'll take you through the history of how the spur line, some of you know the Dinky. If you've heard about the Dinky, the Princeton Junction line, there's a spur line that brings you into Princeton. That came in around the time of the Civil War. So some really interesting early history. So as I said, this is this painting. It sort of sets the stage for what I want to talk about. So let's see what's next. By the way, so that's the, this is the painter, this fellow Teller. He was born in 1899, painted this in it was about 1928. The hotel and the store are no longer there, but there was a photographic record of them. As you see, this is an image after the rail lines were removed. So it was, the painting was 1862, and then the next year the rail line was moved to the current location, Princeton Junction, basically 2 miles to the east. You'll see this in a little bit. This is the Princeton Historical Society has some interesting materials, and this is sort of the beginnings of our little exhibit that I got quite interested in. Back here is a hand-drawn map of that basin. If you look closely here, it says the DNR Canal. Okay, and up here it says railroad leading from Philadelphia to New York. Distance of whatever it says, 96 miles or something. And then in the box that I put up at the top there, it says hotel property, and then to the next, the little square to the right of it, it says store, and then it says telegraph office. Okay, so the date of that map, hand-drawn map, is 1853. And then the Historical Society also had an early telegram. And this is the telegram. It's the Magnetic Telegraph Company. That was Morse's Commercial Telegraph Company. And what I especially like about it, if you look closely here, it says office in Princeton, Princeton Basin, near Railroad Depot. So here's the depot building. Right? And the date of this telegram is 1853. So this is the earliest local telegram that I could find. And I got interested in the kind of equipment that would be used to receive this. This was before the sounding type telegraph that were used later, or the printing, the one that printed letters that came later. So in 1853, they were using an embossing type telegraph recorder, which I have an example of here. We'll get to this later. And by the way, I was also pleased when I found this out. It was a telegram to Henry Clay Cameron. So because of the research that I've done, I happen to know who he was. He was a professor of Greek at Princeton, and he was a student of Joseph Henry's. As a matter of fact, he took very detailed notes when he was a student of Joseph Henry's, and we use his notebooks, his student notebooks, for some of the illustrations that I've been using in my research. And this was from his dad. So it says, I am in New York, leave for Philadelphia this evening at 4:30. So that was the message. And it probably came in on a tape. So again, we're trying to sort of trace exactly what equipment was in that telegraph office. So I'm going to read through this. We're going to do a timeline as part of our exhibit. But I thought that this would be useful to think about what's going on in America. And originally I was going to start with the Princeton Basin, the turning basin. But I realized that this transportation and information came together early on. But you're going to see, I'm going to show you an early map of the roads that were in the local area. Matter of fact, there was what was called the Straight Road connecting Trenton and New Brunswick. That became Route 1. We'll see that in a minute. But so the date of that is 1803. This was the charter. It was this road from Trenton to New Brunswick Road. It was a gravel road, including a straight line segment. That was now US 1. I'll show you a map of that in a little bit. Then 1825 is the Erie Canal. We've all heard about the Erie Canal. That was an important early transportation system up in New York and off of the Hudson River. So it was completed in 1825, New York to Buffalo, using steamboats and canal boats. The steamboats were Robert Fulton and Robert Livingston's boats that were on the Hudson River, and then canal boats that would get you to Buffalo. So the whole country got really interested in digging canals. And then in 1830, Joseph Henry was a high school teacher at the Albany Academy. So he came to Princeton in 1832. So at this point, he was teaching high school students, and he developed the understanding of how to use electromagnetism to swing a permanent magnet and ring a bell. So this was an important contribution of his. This was before we all know about Ohm's law. Well, Ohm did his work in 1829. So Joseph Henry didn't have a knowledge of electricity. He was an empiricist. He learned about the problems with using electromagnetism at a distance. And the issue was, if you had a long wire, the wire has resistance. The longer the wire, the more the resistance. And so if you're in a magnet, an electromagnet needs current. So the batteries that he had were these galvanic cells that had a voltage of about 0.5 volt. And if they had a very long wire, like a mile-long wire, you couldn't get enough current to be able to swing a magnet. And he learned how to use what he called compound batteries, 28 cells in series, to produce enough current on a resistive loop to be able to actually swing a magnet and sound a bell. That was really an important innovation, and it was the beginning of using electromagnetism to send a message, in this case, a bell. So that was 1830. 1831 was the Mohawk and Hudson Railway. That was the first railway that went along the Erie Canal. Then 32, right after that, the D&R Canal and the Camden and Amboy Railroad became operational. So, things are happening very quickly. So roads, right, then canals, then a combination of railroads and canals. 1832, Joseph Henry comes to Princeton as a professor of natural philosophy and architecture. He's given a house. This was, in those days, there were professors' houses. His house was right next to Nassau Hall. In these days, all of the students were housed in Nassau Hall. They lived in the basement of Nassau Hall. There were not many students. The entire senior class, when Joseph Henry was teaching here, had about a dozen students. When he left in 1846, there were maybe 50 students. That's 32. 1832 was also the year that Samuel Morse got the idea of the telegraph. So Joseph Henry had done his ringing a bell at a distance before Morse even thought of the concept of it. So if you talk about who might get credit for the telegraph, you might say it should be Joseph Henry, who did his work before Morse. However, Morse was the entrepreneur that made it happen. Okay, that's 32. 36, Joseph Henry did something, and I'll get to this in a later part of the lecture. He did something that was really very important in telegraphy. He set up a campus wire. So he had his laboratory, as if you face Nassau Hall, to the left of Nassau Hall was his laboratory, that was Philosophical Hall. And then to the right of Nassau Hall was Geological Hall, which is today Stanhope, which was the geology collection was there, and the library. And he ran a wire from Philosophical Hall across the campus, just across the front campus, over to Geological Hall, and then another wire to his home, which was right next door. A single wire. And the idea was to ring a bell to tell his wife to send over lunch. But it's a single wire. So what he did, and you'll see, this is a point later, he talks about this, the return path. you're sending a signal out, right? You need a return path. So he used the earth as the return path. And he did this before anyone else. There was a well by his house, and there was a well by his laboratory, and he put a metal plate deep in the well, and he used the earth as the return path. There was a German, Steinheil, who also did this later, did it the year later, but Joseph Henry did it first. So this using the earth as a return path was an important innovation that he did. And he also, by the way, when he was in Princeton, he provided advice to Morse. So Morse was starting to work with people. Morse, you'll see, as a professor of art at NYU, and he was working with a geologist, Leonard Gale, and Gale knew Joseph Henry, and they needed advice about how to make their telegraph work, and Henry provided it. Okay, that's 1836. 1838, Morse and Alfred Vail demonstrated their working telegraph. This was the beginnings for Morse. Alfred Vail was a student working with Samuel Morse, and his dad, if any of you have been to Morristown, there's Speedwell Iron Works. His dad was sort of a wealthy, he was both a judge and also ran the iron works there, and they provided the funding for Morse to be able to develop their telegraph. Morse patents the idea of code, right? It's called signals. There's controversy about that. I'll mention it later. Alfred Vail claims that he invented the Morse code and that Morse took credit for it. I don't know how true that is, but there's certainly controversy about it. Then in 44, Morse, Vail, and this is the important date in telegraphy. It's May 1844. That was the demonstration that Morse and Vail, this is the sending the message, "What hath God wrought?" was the first message that was sent. It was from Ellicott City to Washington. It was the demonstration to Congress of this telegraph system. That was 44. Morse then patents the register. The register, as I said, I have an example of a Morse register here, which we'll demonstrate in a little bit. That was in 46. It was an improvement of the one that they used in 44. Then we'll see in what I'm going to tell you in a little bit. Morse had wanted the U.S. Congress, he wanted to replace the post office. So the idea is, here's a telegraph system. The post office is part of the Constitution, right? The postmaster. And he wanted Congress to take over the business and basically pay him. Congress said that they did a demonstration for a year. It didn't work. And Congress said, fine, we helped you get started. They provided some of the initial funding for Morse. And then they said, go and do it on your own. And then he started a company. That was the Magnetic Telegraph Company in 47. And that was the telegraph office in Princeton. It was one of the first 9 offices on that. Then we'll talk about this in a little bit too. In order for Morse's system to work, he needed a relay. So Morse claimed a lot of credit for himself. He claims to have invented the relay. Actually, Joseph Henry invented the concept of a relay much, much earlier. But for Morse's system to work, again, it was the same problem of sending a current to a great distance. So it was 38 miles from Ellicott City to Washington. 38 miles. So think about that, a wire that's 38 miles. And actually, I think they used the earth as the return path on that, on 38 miles. The batteries that they used were Grove cells, better than the batteries, the cells that Joseph Henry had used. It was a several element cell that was more efficient, higher voltage, had a higher capacity for current. but not enough to actually have this register, which was embossing on a moving tape, not enough to have it operate. So what he did is he had a relay. So he would run the 38 miles to a relay locally, and then that was hooked up to another battery that had the capacity for a lot of current locally to then actually run the register. So this idea, and when Morse did it in 44, they had the relay, but they didn't tell anybody about it because they hadn't issued the patent on it yet. So they even lied to Congress. So Vail wrote a report to Congress about how they did their telegraph, and they left out the relay. And then there was this reissue of the patent. Let's see, this is the reissue of the patent showing this receiving magnet. The relay was in 48. Then this is that telegram that I mentioned to Henry Clay Cameron. 57, Western Union gets formed. There was a Western Union office in Princeton. 58 was the transatlantic telegraph cable, submarine cable. And then 61 was the transcontinental telegraph that was done by Western Union. So that's sort of a history. Now, it's a long list. I usually don't like to go through lists like that, but we're going to put together a timeline of all the things that happened. But now let's get to some of these maps. So this is, I think, I sort of discovered this a few days ago. This is a map of, the Trenton and New Brunswick Turnpike Road. So here's Trenton, this is the Delaware River. And over here is the Raritan River. And Raritan Bay is over here. And for those of you that know the area, this road here is Route 27. Also, so I thought that was pretty cool. And this is some statement about, let's just read this together. What is now US 1 between Trenton and New Brunswick was originally chartered as the Trenton and New Brunswick Turnpike in 1803. Throughout its history, Trenton and New Brunswick faced stiff competition from canals such as the DNR Canal. Let's see, throughout its history, yes. And the railroads such as the Camden and Amboy Railroad. In the later part of the 19th century, the Turnpike Company folded, and the Pennsylvania Railroad took over the ownership of the Turnpike. So at first it was, and then when the charter for the Trenton and New Brunswick Turnpike expired in 1903, it became a public road. And when the first numbered highways were legislated in 1916, the present US 1 between New Brunswick and Elizabeth was to become part of Route 1, a route that was to connect Trenton and Elizabeth. You know, Route 1 goes all the way from Maine all the way down to Florida.
Mike?
Yes.
I used to hear that section of Route 1 was one of the straightest roads in the world.
Okay, it looks kind of straight there. Well, I'm going to do some things here. This is what I'm about to do. I think is probably annoying, and I apologize for it. But I'm going to overlay a map on top of it, and it's going to fade in and out, and it's going to blink, and I hope it doesn't give anybody a seizure. So let's see. Okay, so this is a modern map. You can see Route 27. Okay, and then this is Route 1. You see Route 1 is right along that straight line. Okay, and here's New Brunswick over here, and there's the Delaware River over there. Okay, I'm going to do this a few times, so it's, as I said, it's going to get annoying. Okay, so that's the road. So that's what happened in 1803. Okay, and there's the map here. Right, so that's, I didn't know this about it being the straightest section, but it is a straight section. Trenton, Delaware River. Over here in New Brunswick, you have the Raritan River. Okay, let's see what the next one is. You're going to see this several times. So here it is again, and this, I think this next one is going to be where the canal, the DNR Canal is. So I think I took a map of the modern DNR Canal and overlaid it on this. So let's just look at this. So the DNR Canal comes off the Delaware, It goes up and then it eventually joins the Raritan River, Delaware and Raritan. So you can see where it's been dug. And this is a modern map. It shows Lake Carnegie. So there's the Millstone River as part of that. There's a dam on the Millstone River that makes Lake Carnegie. That came in 1906. But again, you can see that same overlay. As I said, annoying. Let's do this again. The next one, I'm going to show you the rail lines. So that was the DNR Canal. And this is the next one is a map from 1860. So it was just before the rail line was moved. So this is when the rail line stopped in Princeton. Remember I showed you in that early image the turning basin, there was the rail line there. So let's just take a look at this one. So Princeton's right here. That's Princeton. Okay, and you see that the rail line, here's the rail line, is coming right along the canal. Okay, so you saw that the canal and the rail line came together, but then it separates. It doesn't continue with the canal, it comes down in another path. But for a period of time, that rail station was right there in Princeton, at the turning basin. Here's the rail line. And then it joined, by the way, this is Camden and Amboy, and then it joined another rail company to go the rest of the way to New York. Okay. And by the way, this is a stop certificate. It's issued, this is 1834, just after the company got formed, and signed by this Robert Stevens. I think that's Stevens Institute. Is the I think he's the responsible, and he was into locomotives. He was the president of the rail company then. Later on, it became Robert Field Stockton became the president of the company. And you see the images there. They have a steamboats on the left there, and then they have the John Bull locomotive and the rail line on the right. I do this one more time. Let's see. I think. Oh yes, and this is a map from 1870. So remember, that was 1860. The rail line was right along the canal. And here's 1870. This is where they moved the Camden and Amboy branch line, moved to the east, and then there's the branch line. This is when the Dinky comes in. That came in 1865. Okay, and then this line eventually is taken over by the Pennsylvania Railroad, which is today, that's the northeast quarter. Okay, so that's some of the early history. So let's see what else I have here.
Mike, is there anything left of the canals?
They're canal boats. So it's, there's a towpath. Yeah, the canal is still there.
It's totally still there.
Oh yeah, so that whole, and as a matter of fact, if you walk on the towpaths, there are remnants of the railroad. So I've walked in different places around Princeton. You can see some swing bridges that they had for crossing over the canal. There's actually, if you go to Kingston, there's actually, there's some locks. The canal itself was not all at the same level, so they had to manage this. So, and if you go to Quaker Road, there's a little building there that was called Port Mercer. And when these places where the canal boats stopped, it was like a little town, right? And as I said, they were not they were sort of this seedy. It was for Princeton, it was a red light district. I don't know that much about Port Mercer. That's at the end of the Quaker Road, but it's the same sort of thing. They had a lock there and a turning basin.
Professor?
Yes?
Was this dug by hand?
Oh yeah, it was.
Shovels?
It was done, animals and digging. Yes, there's a lot of history about how these canals were dug. And if you look into the history of it, William Penn actually thought that there ought to be canals. And it was very hard. The roads were not very good. So it was the idea of using boats to get around. It was a transportation system. Later, it was used for moving coal from Pennsylvania into New York. So, coal, they needed coal for heating houses. Yes?
Were any of the paths kind of like natural sort of declivities that you didn't have to dig as much? I mean, did they follow?
Well, I think if you saw that, they used the riverbeds. So like the millstone type of boat, you could row with oars, right? But then you're pushing against the water, and it's not as efficient as actually poling. So a canal boat, if you had a pole and pushed into the riverbed and pushed yourself, you'd be pushing against earth. So that would be better. And then they had the tow paths, they had horses to pull the boats along. Right. So it's just a more efficient way to travel. But this is, again, the beginning of transportation, when there were, steam engines were brand new, locomotives were brand new. It was just interesting the way that whole thing started. Okay, now that was sort of a prelude to a shortened lecture that I give about the telegraph. So I'm going to go through this, and then we'll get to some of these toys that I have here, which I think are pretty cool. So this is Henry Morse and the telegraph. So this is the story of the scientist versus the artist entrepreneur. Some of you may or may not realize, but Morse was not a technical person, he was an artist. And he was the one, he was actually a failed artist. He studied with Benjamin West, who was an American expatriate in the Royal Society in Britain. And he wanted to paint landscapes, make money at it. And the Americans were not that sophisticated in being interested in art, so he couldn't make money as an artist, and he turned his attention to telegraphy. The discovery by the scientist is Joseph Henry. So this was an early newspaper, 1847, the same year that telegraph office opened in Princeton. This is from a Pittsburgh newspaper, and there was a section of the newspaper, dispatch for the post by electric telegraph. So this was something that was beginning to happen. And you've heard of wire services. Wire services was telegraphy, right? So the AP and all of these groups, that's where that name comes from. Okay. Radical innovation, instant news by wire from afar. I like this image. This is Edward Hopper's Railroad Sunset. And what it is a rail line and a telegraph pole. And it just reminds us that the rail system and the telegraph system, they share the right-of-way. So that's a signal tower. Information and transportation networks come together. And then these are some of the people. So Morse, this concept of intelligence at a distance, that's a word that he uses to describe his telegraph system in his patent. Edison, earlier in a lecture, I talked about lighting New York City with DC electricity. George Westinghouse was AC electricity to a greater distance. And then I later do a lecture on Marconi about wireless telegraphy. So here's Morse. That was his self-portrait of Morse. He was a Yaley. He was a good painter. Self-taught. Here he's painting his father, who was a geographer. Studied with Benjamin West. This is West's self-portrait on a stamp. He's one of several innovators that studied with West. Robert Fulton also studied with Benjamin West. Then Morse came back to America. Here he's in Charleston, South Carolina. He's painting his wife, Lucretia. She sadly will die, and then after she dies in 1825, he goes off to Europe. He leaves the children with relatives, and then on his way back, he will get this idea for the telegraph. So here's the story about him. Painter. He starts the National Academy of Design, modeled after the Royal Society in England. Then he becomes the first professor of art in the country at NYU. And then by 1840, he has his patent. He also introduced photography into America. So while he was off in Europe, he meets Louis Daguerre, and he learns about daguerreotypes, and this is one of Morse's exposure of an unknown sitter, one of the first daguerreotypes in America. Here was his, he does a painting of his teacher. This is Benjamin Silliman, who's a professor of geology at Yale. So that is a commissioned work. Again, he's trying to make his a living as a painter, unsuccessful. And then Silliman's important in American science. Silliman was the editor of, this is conducted by Benjamin Silliman, that's on the left there. It's the American Journal of Science and the Arts, and this was the scientific journal in America. And one of the people that's publishing in that is Joseph Henry. So Silliman and Henry know each other. And here's a statue of Joseph Henry with his holding a telegraph that he demonstrates to his students at Albany Academy. And the date of this was 1830. This was an issue from the Albany Academy. And the bell that he rang was a brass bell. This is, I went and visited the New York State Library. They have Joseph Henry's items up there that he had from the Albany Academy, and that was the bell that he used. So, as I said, he was a high school teacher, and he develops the sounding telegraph. And here's another picture of him holding that telegraph with a plaque. If you visit Albany today, you go to the State House. Right near the State House is the Board of Education building that's now the building that used to be the Albany Academy. And on the field in front there, it says Birthplace of Modern Electricity. Here discovering magnetic induction. Joseph Henry pioneered the telegraph and the electric motor, 1829 to 31. And this is the article that he wrote in 1831. And that was the article that he figured out how to use his compound battery to have a force at a great distance. So that comes back later, we'll see. So this early story of electromagnetism, it's 1820 or 1819. This was the work of Hans Christian Ørsted. Ørsted discovered that if you send current through a wire and you brought a navigational compass, a magnetic compass nearby, it turns. That was a revolutionary discovery. That it was the first time that electricity and magnetism were linked, and that sort of set off. It was all over the world. It set off exciting experiments. Michael Faraday, Ampere, Arago, many others started studying electricity and magnetism. Sturgeon develops the first horseshoe magnet in 1825. Joseph Henry builds the world's strongest electromagnets and his telegraph in 30 or 31. And then Henry comes to Princeton. This is Sturgeon's magnet. These cups here, the galvanic cells it was copper and zinc and in a cup of acid. So there are two of these in series, and the wires were bare wires. So one of the things, and looking through Joseph Henry's notes, he talked about using bell wire. Now I've heard that term bell wire. How many of you have heard that phrase bell wire?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that's a doorbell wire?
These days.
It's not, because there were no doorbells, electric and magnetic doorbells. So these, as near as I can tell, these were when you went to a house and there was a little knob that you pulled up the house that was a wire that went up to a little bell. Okay, that was called bell wire. Bare wire, flexible wire that allowed you to ring a bell. So there were no insulated wires. So Joseph Henry was constantly talking about bell wire. And the kind of wire that they had here was just one wrap, and they would insulate the metal horseshoe. Joseph Henry figured out to be able to make many turns of wire by insulating the wire with either rope or silk or twine. I'm going to open up one of my little demos here. I had a student make a little replica of this. It's fun to look at this for a second. Tab. Yeah, here's a. I had a student do this. We just took some bare wire, and she just took some twine and just wrapped it up, and it allows you to make lots of turns. This is the sort of stuff that Joseph Henry did all the time. So then he makes this, in Albany, he makes a magnet that weighs 21 pounds that was able to lift a weight of 750 pounds. World's strongest magnet. Does that 1831. He writes about that in his article. And then this is a replica of that he was responsible for helping the illustrator draw this. This was his sounding telegraph. A bar magnet, one end north, the other end south, inside of the horseshoe. Currents going in one direction. One end would be north, the other end would be south. It would repel, swing on a pivot, and hit a bell. And the bell had to be brass. First time I tried making a replica of it, I used steel. And I forgot, it stuck to it. Right, so brass is non-magnetic, so we could swing it back and forth. This is a lecture that I give to liberal arts students. I teach them a little bit about, these are Ohm's two laws. I don't know if you're aware of the rho L over A. That was actually a statement in Ohm's article in 1829. The idea that, and it was the resistance of wires, and it was the idea that the resistance, he used a different symbol than R, was related to the length of the wire and inversely to the section, the area, the cross-sectional area. So that would be, this rho L over A is one of Ohm's law, as well as the idea of the relationship between voltage and current. And then I would explain to students about how the Joseph Henry system works, and I do it just with showing the battery, permanent magnet, the idea you flip the direction of the battery. In this case, it will swing just due to repulsion of like poles and attraction of different poles. Okay, poles. Okay. Then this explains this idea of why you needed to use a battery that had many cells. So the longer the path, the greater the resistance, the greater the voltage, the greater the current, right? And therefore you needed a greater voltage to be able to have sufficient current to be able to have a large enough magnetic field to ring it at a distance. And then again, for my students, they don't know the difference between voltage and current. I chose to do it this way. I was explaining that a battery, it's like a AA cell, 1 volt and up to an amp. Put them in series, of course, you get a greater voltage, right? But the current is limited by the individual cell. Put them in parallel, of course, you have more surface area, and you get a greater current. Then this is Joseph Henry's own statement. This was from 1876, 2 years before he died. He wrote a letter. He was requested by Professor Dodd, who was a mathematician here at Princeton, to describe what he did in his career. And at the beginning of his letter, he says, the electromagnetic telegraph was invented by me in Albany in 1830. He was grumpy because Morse had gotten a lot of credit for the telegraph, and people just ignored Joseph Henry. So his whole life he was grumpy about that. And then he also pointed out that I think the first actual line of the telegraph using the earth as a conductor was made at the beginning of 36. The wire was extended across the front of campus, upper story of the library building, that's Stanhope, to Philosophical Hall on the opposite side. the ends terminating in two wells. Through this wire, signals were sent from time to time from my house to my laboratory. Here's an image that I was able to track down. This was a student sketch at Nassau Hall. Today there's a big tall fence there. That's the Fitz-Randolph Gate. It's in front of Nassau Hall. Philosophical Hall was here on one side. This is Stanhope on the other side. And this was Joseph Henry's house at that time. That was later that house was taken apart and another house was built for it. So this is the house, 1836. And that was the campus wire. Then what Morse did, 32, he gets the idea about how to make a telegraph. Leonard Gale and Alfred Vail help him. Morse then shows President von Buren in 38, and then Henry will help Morse get money for his demonstration. This is from Morse's notebook, in which he came up with the idea of a code, a dot and dash code. And then his idea was to have a permanent magnet with a pen on a moving piece of paper, and then an electromagnet and a pivot. So the idea is you activate the electromagnet, it pulls it up, right? And then if you take the current away, it ceases to become magnetized, and then the permanent magnet would bring it back. So this was, Morse got this idea. It was also controversial. There were people, there was somebody else that was on the boat that said it was his idea, that Morse copied it. I don't know. There's often, let's see, invention has lots of parents. Success has lots of parents. Yes?
Why didn't you just use a spring?
There are a lot of easy ways. Yes, there were many other ways to do it. You're right, you could use a spring. But, hey, look, this is when stuff is brand new. This was revolutionary when he did that. And I just point out here that the dots and dashes today on our wireless, you look at the kind of signals that are coming through Wi-Fi. It's basically Morse code. It's the beginning of digital code. By the way, Joseph Henry appreciated that he said that Morse's greatest contribution was the concept of the code. Because the other schemes that were used for sending information were complicated. They used like needles, lots of wires. There were many other complicated schemes. This was a very elegant scheme. Here's his first, this was his demonstration device. He was an artist, so this was a canvas stretcher. Okay, and then there was a falling weight that would move the tape, and then a swinging pen that would make marks on the tape. And then he had a device. His brother was a printer, so they had this idea, we called it a port rule. It was a way to assemble a message. So you see, it was movable type. So if you know about printing, right? So he would have different, in the port rule, he would assemble a message in the port rule, and then had a crank that moved this thing up and down, which made contacts up and down. Yes?
Am I correct that the origin of the terms dots and dashes was on that moving paper tape, a short impulse gave you a dot, a long one gave you a dash?
No, so at this point, the swing on his was actually moving back and forth. They weren't dots and dashes, they were like little marks. I'll show you what that looks like. I don't know the origins of the dots and dashes. I know that Edison was also a telegrapher. He called one of his kids Dot and the other one Dash. As I said, I'm not sure where that origin came from.
It was based on a pen dropping and rising.
Yeah, but this one was not a pen. This was a pen swinging back and forth.
Yeah, but later ones.
Later one was up and down. Yes,
right.
Those were inking ones. And by the way, these were little. They used cups of mercury.
Right.
So this was Joseph Henry would do this. So you would make a contact by dipping into a cup of mercury. So it was no friction involved, and just allowed this thing to rock and then send a message. I do a demonstration in my lecture on this one. We made a little replica of it. So it's a canvas stretcher. The battery was a copper zinc galvanic cell. Again, Morse did not realize that to send it to a great distance, you couldn't use a simple galvanic cell. You needed to use a compound battery of type Joseph Henry had. The penholder, yes, it's deflected by a electromagnet. Again, this is this contacts going up and down. And then once they figured out how to, with the help of Leonard Gale, who was the technical person, who was a friend of Joseph Henry, they took their device that could go a distance of a few miles, and they, this is Samuel Morse's painting of Judge Vail. So this was his student's father. He actually painted the parents. Morse at this point had no money. Vail had money, so he funded it. And he painted those as a gift for the judge and his wife. Then he shows it to President Van Buren. And in 42, Henry will actually write a letter to Morse encouraging him to develop the telegraph. So by the way, let me just say this. This is an interesting aspect. You know, electromagnetism is brand new. If you think about what electromagnetism is good for, well, we all care about radio, so it's, you know, electromagnetic waves. That comes much later. That's, you know, that's Marconi. You say, hey, it's good for motors, right? So Joseph Henry developed a motor in 1831, an electromagnetic motor. You'd say, hey, that might be a good application. But the motors of those days were steam engines. And Joseph Henry actually realized that these galvanic cells, they required an expensive material, zinc, that would dissolve. So he compared the cost of zinc to the cost of coal for running a steam engine. And he thought that using electricity for motion, for motive power, he thought it was useless. So he was very negative on that. But the idea of telegraphy, that was the letter that he wrote to Morse, he said, this is a good application of electromagnetism. So the first real practical application of electromagnetism was for telegraphy. And Joseph Henry recognized that. So this was Morse's patent in 1840. Congress gives him money to do a demonstration. Morse will hire Alfred Vail. Congressman, this is a congressman from Maine, Fogg Smith, helps him. The congressman helps him get the money, and then he gets hired by Morse. Okay. Sound normal? It's what they do today, right? It's, you know, it's kind of graft and the politicians. And then Smith will hire Ezra Cornell. So if you, this is how Cornell was an engineer and a landowner into agriculture, and he helped them dig a trench. The original plan was to have the wire underground, but then short it out, and then they decided to put the wire on a pole. So that was, Cornell was part of that group. 38 miles. It was along the B&O Railroad, and this was Peter Cooper's locomotive. This is the Tom Thumb, and they used the right-of-way. And by the way, if you go to the Library of Congress, you can see all the letters of Morse and all the difficulties he had in terms of laying the wires and figuring out how to spend the money and how to meet their objective. Here's an image of Ezra Cornell at that point. And then this is their success, May 1844. And what this was, this first message. If you go to the Smithsonian, they have drawers, many copies of this. It says this sentence was written from Washington by me. So this was Morse, and it used embossing. So dot, dash, dash. So there's a short, long, long on a moving tape. Here's 4 dots. Hath God wrought. The message was suggested by a patent examiner's daughter to Morse. Morse went and staying with a patent examiner when he was doing this demonstration. So if you go to the Smithsonian, they don't have this on display, but in the back room they have a bunch of these tapes. They were souvenirs that Morse generated. So the scientist rings a bell at a distance. The development happens because the government funds it. A private company gets formed by Morse. And the design, it's the artist that really, Morse, that really had the vision. So this is this issue about who should get credit. Should it be the person who did it first or the person who made it happen? And that's a debatable issue. I personally think that Morse should get a lot of the credit for this, even though that Henry did this early work. This was the reissue of the patent. So the 1846 patent, and this shows the Morse relay. This was the important idea here is that this is the register. So you have an electromagnet that pulls a pin up, and it's moving on a moving tape, and that requires a fair amount of force. So it requires a lot of current. And then the distance that you're sending to your relay is very great. So if you went directly to your register, you would have to have a very high voltage to overcome the high resistance. But if you have a very easy operating relay locally, then you can have another battery, and you can, so that can get, it's a short loop, low resistance, you can get a large force. And this was the critical element to be able to have the Morse telegraph work. And let me just bring this here up.
Professor?
Yes?
The paper tape that you're driving, what do you use to run the tape?
I'll show you. It's a weight. It's weight driven. I've got a telegraph register here. I think this is really cool. I'll show you in just a minute, Walt. Let's see. But it's a good question. Okay, so this is a later. This is by Bunnell. This is one of their. I do a demonstration of this in my lecture normally. See, there's a little contact there. See that moving back and forth? Top. Okay, so it's a very light spring, and it just allows you to make a contact. So it doesn't take very much current. It's got a lot of turns associated with it. It's a very gentle operation. But once you make a contact, then you can close a local circuit and run a lot of current. So that was and this is also the basis of repeaters. So, and this was, Morse did this in 1848. He was able to share because he was able to get the patent on it and sort of lay claim to it. And I didn't realize the RE, it's a reissue of a patent that had numbers in the many thousands. So I know a lot about patents, but I didn't know about these reissues. Okay. Then here, this is right after they did that demonstration. He opened and operated the direction of the post office, the first public telegraph office in the United States, 1845. That was a trial, and Congress said no. And then eventually telegraph lines started showing up connecting cities. So here's Washington and Baltimore. That was the first line, 38 miles. And then these other ones in 53. It spread like wildfire. I mean, people just really wanted to send information by telegraphy. Oh, Port Jervis, let's see. Yeah, and the Western Union gets formed in 56. Morse was not really involved in these were the Western telegraph companies, or a bunch of them. They consolidated. Cornell and Sibley are the two principals of Western Union. And I guess Morse got royalties on it. Transcontinental Railroad in 61. And then the Stearns, I won't talk about the duplex. And then what happened is there was this lawsuit, O'Reilly v. Morse. Joseph Henry was the expert witness, and then Morse didn't like what Henry said, and so he writes a 75-page document criticizing Joseph Henry. That was sort of the end of their friendly relations. This is the telegraph line. Here's the U.S. Capitol. Oh, I'm doing this, I'm almost to the end, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the things I have here. This painting here, this is in the National Portrait Gallery in Washington. It's by Christian Schussler, and it's 19 Americans. It's called Men of Progress. 19 Americans with their objects, like this is McCormick's combine, and there's Colt and the Colt revolvers here, and Elias Howe and his sewing machine. There's the rotary press is down here with the plans, but right in the middle here we have Samuel Morse, we have the telegraph register, and we have Joseph Henry in the back there. So these are probably on opposite sides of the table because they can't stand each other. By the way, they were never together in the room like that. So Schussler went and figured out where people should be, painted each one separately, and put it together there.
Is Peter Cooper Union?
Cooper Union, yeah. He was also, his son, I think, was mayor of New York. He ran the ironworks, and he was a principal in the B&O Railroad. So here's a close-up of that central area. And then, in answer to your question, well, this is that moving tape. So this is a DeGuerre type of a telegraph operator. Some of the operators were women. And the idea is you have a moving tape, and it would make dots and dashes on the tape. I'm going to show you, I got this one moving. I'll show you how that works. It's really kind of cool. Actually, this is probably a time for me to bring that up. So this is, I got this, this is a Morse register that I picked up on, well, you get all great things on eBay. And it was not cheap. And it was not functional. And it was heavily corroded. So I did what everybody says not to do, is you got rid of the patina. I polished it up, and I got it functioning. So let me get the camera on. So first off, the coils are working. I didn't have a chance to sort of set it up. But you see how there's a little lever, right? And then there's at the end here is a little pin, and that pin sits in a groove. Okay, and then the idea when the pin is up and the tape is moving, it leaves a trail. And I'll show you before I actually get this going. Here's a sample that I made with this unit. Let's see if it shows. Lights. I don't know if you can see the. Let's see if I can get some shadows on that. Later on, you can come and take a look. Oh, there it is. You can see the dots and dashes. See the SOS. Okay, so that was made in this moving tape. The tape that I had, see, Paul is here, right? Right, you recognize that? Oh, of course. I had some tape. That was a tape from PDP-8 paper tape punch. I'm still trying to find out what the right tape is. I should move this back here. So it's, my weight is going to be this vise. Okay, take the vise, I'm going to hang it off to the side here. So I restore old clocks. The speed governor on this thing is called the fly. Any of you know about old grandfather clocks? The bell ringer on a grandfather clock. They're weight driven. As the weight falls, if you didn't have something to slow it down, it would accelerate as the weight falls. It's on a line shaft, so it's a rope wrapped over a shaft, and then it falls.
It's called a governor.
It's a speed governor, yeah.
And
But it's, for clocks, clocks they call it the FLY, F-L-Y.
It was used originally on steam engines, and it's also used on phonographs. To find a phonograph.
Absolutely, it's used on phonographs, and it's used on music boxes, and yeah. So it's a speed governor. Actually, one of the courses I teach is in feedback control.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, it's the same phenomenon that you'd have if you jump out of an airplane, right? And if you were in vacuum, you obviously won't be in an airplane in a vacuum. Jump out of a rocket ship in a vacuum, you go faster and faster, right? Because the force of gravity is constant, right? And therefore, F equals ma, so your velocity increases linearly. But if you're in air, what happens eventually, you have aerodynamic drag, and eventually the weight of gravity matches the aerodynamic drag, and then you fall at a constant rate. So this fly mechanism, which is just a little spinning plate, is what causes this to feed at a constant speed. And let's see, just give me a second.
Terminal velocity for a reason.
So I'm going to put the tape in here. And so let's see, and there's a little on-off switch here. Okay, so you see it's feeding, and then it's got to get the tension right, and so it just feeds. So it's a weight. The weight is falling, right? And as I said, it just makes marks on the tape. Okay, pretty cool, right?
Enough tape to run your message.
Yeah, so they would actually, they didn't waste the tape, they reused the tape, they moved them over at different places. So, and then what you do is then you'd read the code, you'd read the code off of the tape, and then you write down each letter down, and then you put it on a message. So that's the weight-driven version. All brass, this was made in Philadelphia. Here's another one that I picked up at I think I got this at our swap meet. I think I got this from Bruce Mager.
Yeah.
So this, and I also had to clean this up. This is this one over here was weight driven. The one I got from Bruce is a later one. So I think it had Bruce's tag on it. This is 1880, and it's a Phelps. And it uses a spring. So it's, some clocks are weight-driven clocks and some are sprung. So this has, by the way, the coils were not working. I had to do a little rewiring on it. Let's see, it's got an on-off. It's got an internal mechanism here. And then I'll just feed. Let's see if I remember how I do this. It comes in from the top. It comes underneath. It's the same idea. It's got a pin. It's got a wheel with a notch in it. It goes underneath. Let me slide this one underneath here. Right up, yes. It's basically the same kind of mechanism, but it's done with a spring. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, there it goes. It's the same idea. But spring driven. Okay, then let's see what else I have here to show you. So this is also, these are the sounders that came in. You've probably all seen these things. I've never really paid attention to it. So the difference between the one where you're moving on the tape, you have dots and dashes. So the dot is 1 unit of time and the dash is 3 units of time, right? With a gap of 1 unit of time. So on the tape, you know when it begins and it ends. You can see where it starts. But if you listen to the tape version, all you'd hear is a click when it's coming in, and when it releases, you don't hear anything. But the sounders were redesigned by Alfred Vail, and when it clicks down, you hear a click, and then when it releases, you hear a click. Okay, so you need the 2 clicks, right, to know the difference between a dot and a dash, which is a longer gap between the 2. And then the Edison folks, they had a little, if you're doing beeps, you can tell the length of a beep, whether it's short or long, right? So that you don't need it with beeps. So these clickers, I've seen these things for years, never really thought about it, but it's important that it has a click at the beginning and a click at the end.
But it's missing the Prince Albert can.
Absolutely. It is. And then finally,
which makes it sound different, so you have a room full of these things, and each person can copy their own.
And then sort of the end of this collection here, let me see if I can get this a little higher. So you can see this, so everybody can see this. This is what Joseph Henry built to show his students in Princeton how the Morse system worked. So he had a spring that he made out of a piece of metal. See, this is all handmade. He had a coil. We know that this is Joseph Henry because he painted his coils with all of the Joseph Henry devices are like this. And then he had just a spool of paper at the end, and it was supposed to have a pen in here. It was supposed to make a mark, and you energize it, and it pulls it down. So again, this is something that he showed to his students.
If he used a pen, he had to have like a quill pen or something. Right?
Probably, I'm sure. They wrote letters. They wrote a lot of letters. So it probably was a quill pen.
But you had to have enough ink in the reservoir to keep this thing going.
Oh yeah, but this was just a demonstration for his students.
Fountain pens would date back to the mid-19th century.
Yeah, but I think he needed something very light. There's a little hole here. We don't have a pen to we don't have his pen or exactly what he did. Although we actually have his writing desk, as I think about it, over in our reservoir. I'm just about done here. Okay, so let's see what's else. So this is the Vail Register at Cornell. Vail, not only was Joseph Henry upset with Morse, but Vail was very upset with Morse. So Cornell, if you think of Cornell, you got to think of telegraphy. If you look closely at this register, it is signed, I think, in 17 places by Alfred Vail. Because he made it, and he did not want Morse to take credit for it, even though Morse got the patent. And it's the Sibley College of Cornell. Sibley was a partner of Cornell in Western Union. And then here's a daguerreotype by Matthew Brady of Morse with his hand on the Morse register. And then I think I have 2 more slides here, and I'll finish. Sorry if I've gone over a bit.
No, you're not.
Yeah. So telegraphers, in the story of innovation, so we have Morse there. We have Andrew Carnegie was a telegrapher for the Pennsylvania Railroad. That's how he worked with Thomas Scott, and telegraphy sort of gave him his entree to business. Alexander Graham Bell was his development was the harmonic telegraph that led to the telephone. Thomas Edison, of course, started out as a telegrapher. His first invention was a stock ticker, which was a telegraphic device. And then, of course, Marconi was wireless telegraphy. So this idea of telegraphy, they're all telegraphers, and it really all started with Henry and Morse. And the key ideas here are the strong electromagnet, Joseph Henry, the code, Morse or Vail. It involved government, investment, private companies, and then the impact on the culture was wire services and the public. And then that last idea is the artist here, as Morse as an innovator. Okay, I think that's it.
There's a wire scrap there.
Oh, yeah, I forgot one more thing. Thank you. I forgot. I got another cool thing. thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another, this was not a, so some of you, yeah, actually, you guys probably know Roger Buchnall.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are nodding. So you know, it's Roger. It's sort of a sad story about Roger. Do you know about Roger?
No.
So he has he's gotten rid of his collection. It's being auctioned off at Ripley's. I was up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I've known Roger for years. I got a lot of good stuff from him. I got this from Roger, from Roger's collection. He a chiropractor was working on his neck.
We would see him at Kutztown.
You often would see him. You haven't seen him in a long time. Yeah. The reason he's actually got rid of, I spoke to him this summer. A chiropractor was working on his neck, and he's sort of semi-paralyzed as a result of it. And it's he's not paralyzed, but he's not well. And so he took his entire collection, and it went to Ripley's. And this is. Get this down a little bit. And this is a section of the 1858 submarine cable that I picked up from Roger's auction. Let's see if I can get this a little lower. This is kind of cool. So I wasn't sure whether it was authentic or not. It looked right, but after cleaning it up and looking closely at it, and so what happened with the telegraph cable, the Tiffany's sold these things as souvenirs. And so there are many of Tiffany's that have 3 brass bands on them. This only has 2, but when I checked the dimensions on it, the center conductor is 7 strands of copper, and each one of these steel bands that are on the out that are rotated are 5. So it has all the right dimensions, and it was filled with gutta percha, which is a sort of a natural tree. It's like a latex. So I'm pretty certain that this is an original section of the submarine cable, 1858. Wow. It lasted for 3 weeks, and it was, I believe it failed. You guys may know the story better than I do. I think it failed. They boosted the voltage and then melted it, right?
We had a presentation by Bill Barnes, who is an expert at this.
I should talk to him, because these items. Thank you. Thank you. For the exhibit that we're going to do for the Historical Society, I'm going to put a section of the submarine cable on display. We're going to put the register on display, these 2 different registers. We'll probably put this Joseph Henry device on display, and also the sounder. And one last thing I should mention is I visited John Jenkins. If you know John, the Spark Museum in Bellingham, Washington. You guys know John? He's independently wealthy. He was one of the early, Microsoft, one of the early employees of Microsoft. He runs a museum in Bellingham, Washington, on early scientific instruments, electricity. He has this really great display where you tap out Morse code, and then you have a strip of light-emitting diodes, and you see the code going down the strip. So we're going to do something like that as part of our display with the Historical Society.
Is it possible the cable failed due to electrolysis? If you have, let's say this looks like a coaxial cable, if the center conductor is positive and there's enough leakage current through the gutta percha, you're going to gradually deplate material from your center conductor until finally it ain't.
Yeah, but my understanding is that they were unhappy about how weak the signal was, and they boosted the voltage so much, and I think what I remember hearing is that it melted.
But it broke down the insulation.
Arced over. Yeah, so as I said, I'm not an expert on this part of it at all, and actually it sounds like there may be somebody in our group that can find out about it. But in any case, it lasted for 3 weeks. So the cable, so you know about the telegrapher's equations. Heaviside, Oliver Heaviside developed the telegrapher's equation, developed it to sort of understand the problems of sending messages on a coax. So that grew out of this early work. This was 1858. I think it was 5 years before they had another cable, something like that. Harry, you may know. That's
it would have been after the Civil War when they did it.
Oh yeah, this is 58. You're probably right. It was Cyrus Field. I'm not sure.
It was about 1869 when it became, I think, went into full operation. But
yes, Walt.
How do they know which side was going to send and receive? There's only one wire, right? So it's not like, duplex. It's just like somebody had to.
Well, no, but the return is the case. It's coax.
I mean by the two parties at the two ends of the line. How did they know when it was their turn to send?
You said over.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, what do you do with a standard telegraph?
So wait a minute.
You have to switch.
Or radio.
Wait a minute. So it's 58. So I do know the first duplex was 72. So the duplex. So the duplex, you didn't need. You could have two messages at the same time. So that was there were two different schemes for that in terms of the recording device. You could either have two different windings or you could use a bridge rectifier. So the duplex, I do a demonstration of that, but this was 58. So I think that the technique that was used is you were supposed to keep your telegraph key closed, right? And then the person that was sending, let's see, would then break the circuit and then send a code. And then when you're done sending, so current would get to the other end, then you were supposed to close your key, right? If you've seen these early keys, now actually the corresponding key didn't have a shorting. So I don't know how they did it at the beginning. They may have had a shorting link, but over sounds pretty good to me.
I don't understand the register. I get what they're for and how, but like, was there something to kick it to start running, or did they just wind it all day, or did they? Is there a signal to start it?
First off, there's a little lever,
right,
to get it going.
But how do you know you need to get it going?
So presumably, if somebody connected a circuit, you'd hear a click.
Okay. You hear a click, then you flip the lever.
There's a pair of coils
Got it.
and a keeper.
Okay.
Right, and a bar. So maybe you heard a click.
Right, then you flip it on.
So maybe the person at the distant would hit it 5 times.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, let me turn it on. And the weight, I've seen these things in some photographs. It wasn't a single weight hanging down, but usually it was a loop. And then it's the same thing you do in clocks. And if you've seen grandfather clocks, they usually have a pulley and a weight, so it doubles it. But you the distance, if you look at how long it takes, this thing would only go for a couple of minutes.
Right.
Before you would run out of steam.
Right.
So I really don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
And as I said, I would love to get the records from the telegraph office. We've been looking to see if we can find anything. And I checked that there's a telegraph office in Kingston, and the office is there. And I asked the Historical Society if they had any equipment that was in there. They don't. That was also from the same vintage. But one of the things that would be good for the exhibit is to exactly know what kind of equipment they were using in 1853. And as I said, the sounders came in a little later, about 1860. Yes?
Right. Yeah, I just looked it up. The speed of the first transatlantic cable was 0.1 words per minute.
Right. 0.1 words per minute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. There's a long propagation delay because of the capacitance of the cable and the inductance of the cable. So you had to really charge up a zillion miles of cable before the sounder on the other side would come down. But Oliver Heaviside worked out transmission line theory, which eventually made coaxial cable possible once we had dielectrics good enough to get away with it, which specifically polyethylene.
Yeah, I see. Okay. And I believe the diameter of the later cables was much larger.
We have samples of the South American cable, which was essentially the same as the undersea transatlantic cable. And it depends on what part of the path you're talking about. They put very thick ones near the shore, slightly thinner ones, intermediate, and then the deep ocean where nothing's going to bother it was fairly thin. And anybody who's interested in how that cable got blown up, the person's name responsible was Wildman, something Wildman, and I can't remember his name. He was a medical doctor who somehow got to be like a British scientific gave the scientific recommendations. And he's the one that said more voltage, more voltage.
Kind of quack.
Okay. So you look up the name Wildman and you'll get it.
Do they know where it broke?
Yeah, it was near the shore somewhere.
Yes, John.
I'm curious, early on you showed a copy of a telegraph message.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what did it cost to send something like that?
Oh, yeah. So I found records. Let's see, this I can do. The economics associated with it. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. Let me get my Google Chrome. I have the records of the Magnetic Telegraph Company on one of my web pages. And I'll just show you where that is. Let's see if this comes up. Oh, good. And it's, I hit Google too many times. There we go. So it's, I have a web page. It's the way I find it, Princeton. So this is my motorcycle course. But then I go over here to the Joseph Henry Project. Come on. And then I go to the end of the page here. This is the Magnetic Telegraph Company. And I have the records, Magnetic Telegraph Company, 1847. Okay, this is the Articles of Association of the Telegraph Company. And they have the economics associated, the cost of each message per word, forget what it was. And then they have the revenue for Princeton. And there was a suggestion that they should close the Princeton office because it wasn't making any money. Let's see, Control F, and I'll put Princeton here. 142. The president, this is at the beginning, on a motion that the president cause a station to be open in Princeton. Okay, here, and these are the different stations. What is it? Oh, this is, let's see, on a motion that the tariffs of prices from the various stations for every 10 words not exceeding 100, exclusive of address, shall be for every 10 words, so it was 15 cents, I guess, for every 10 words. Okay, to answer your question.
But remember the inflation rates since that time.
Yeah.
More like $15 now.
Where your recipient was, how did you, if you had a recipient, how did you figure out how to get it to the recipient from your source station? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think they had the local mail. I mean, people were known. I mean, this is like John Cameron sending to his son Henry Clay Cameron. Went to the telegraph office in New York, and then he sent it to Princeton, and it was just somebody who lived in Princeton. So here's the revenue here. Let's see, for Princeton. Notice this. The revenue for New York is $1,200, right, for October. Jersey City is $164. New Brunswick is $3.59. Princeton, 60 cents. So these records, by the way, are hilarious. That's the same thing. You can see the Princeton station was not doing well.
Was there some sort of like ISO standard for the word, like how long a word is? Like
5 letters.
A is a word versus You know,
there were a lot of they had a lot of shorthand.
like use really big words to get your money's worth.
Yeah, they had a lot of shorthand ways of doing it. But the majority of these records here are finances. It's just, it was a money-making operation, and it cost them money to run the Princeton station, and it was clearly not a moneymaker.
I know you had to take a Morse code test for your ham license. Every 5 letters is considered 1 word.
Okay.
Right. So I got my ham license after they got rid of the code. So
I had to do the code.
So I was very glad that they got
flunked
rid of it.
twice.
Okay, any more questions? I'm sorry I've gone on for so long. Okay, thank you all for your attention.
As usual, Mike, you fascinated us. So anybody would like to, without touching anything, come and take a look. And we're going to proceed with the auction outside.
So,
yes.
Weldon,
Yes.
was responsible for that. Calvin was supposed to be providing them scientific.
Shut everything down. Good night, folks.
William Thompson. William Thompson. And apparently he dropped out. He said, I'm not going to deal with this. Because he knew it was going to blow up. He knew he was going to burn it out. Well, I've heard